This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Trail Interaction. Happy holidays, and what I'm looking at today is 2018's Nightflyers. This is based upon a short story by George R.R. Martin, who you probably know mainly as the writer of the books that spawned the Game of Thrones HBO television series. And Nightflyers is a really good short story. In fact, I read a lot of George R.R. Martin short stories before he became a presence on television. He edited the Wild Cards books. I think he also wrote some stories, but his role is primarily an editor. He wrote Fever Dream, which is a really good take on vampire stories. And Nightflyers was a short story, or a novella actually, I think, in a collection. And essentially revolved around a ship, the Nightflyer. And it was going to meet these alien entities, and all sorts of hellish type things happened aboard the ship. In fact, I would argue that the writers of Event Horizon, the Thomas W. Anderson movie, had heard of Nightflyers because the story is essentially the same. So it was recently rebooted on Syfy with backing by Netflix. And at the time, I wasn't able to watch the show because it was on Syfy, which I don't have. I don't have cable at all, in fact. But being that Syfy canceled it, which they have a tendency to do with really good shows, Dark Matter, anybody? So that wasn't a shock to me. Though having seen it on Netflix, I don't quite know what to make of it. In the sense that it is visually gorgeous. The production design on this series is some of the best I've ever seen. And I would include The Expanse in that, which looks really good, but not quite as interesting as the production design on Nightflyers, coupled with really good FX, as well as great actors and one of the best opening themes I've heard in months. It's really great music. The thing is, though, what makes it hard to judge about Nightflyers is that it was only in existence for a season. The thing is, also, it's worth mentioning that typically these showrunners know that a show is going to end before it actually ends. Not always, but typically they do. So the way Nightflyers proceeds, you can't necessarily say the series would have taken the same route. Because let's say, hypothetically speaking, that Nightflyers would have been renewed for a second season, and I wish it were. I think certain things wouldn't have been revealed quite as they were. Being that as it exists in its first season is all that it is, certain storylines had to be brought to a head and certain conclusions had to be reached, which wouldn't have probably been the case if it had lasted beyond the first season. And that, I think, makes it somewhat unsatisfying. As I mentioned, it's well acted. It's so well acted. And it has elements of Event Horizon in the sense of it's gory at times and violent, which is fitting the short story, by the way. I'm not knocking that, but it's very anticlimactic. As I mentioned earlier, the story revolves around the Nightflyer, which is rushing to meet these aliens, and weirdness ensues. I haven't read the short story in quite a while, but I don't recall it being quite so pat. In the series, the Nightflyer is haunted by the presence of the mother of the commander of the Nightflyer. And she's essentially AI. She died and she was kind of incorporated into the ship. So the ship is essentially her. Now, it doesn't quite explain, though, why she's acting as she's acting. She's presenting visions to the crew. She's acting as if it's like a ghost. It doesn't quite make sense, really. And there's a part of the story where she is against them trying to meet these aliens. It doesn't tell you why. And again, I understand that if this had lasted beyond a season, maybe they would have resolved this mystery. But it doesn't, and as a result, you don't know why things are happening, really. It's a great looking show. It's once, and I know I'm repeating myself, but it's just visually so remarkable looking. Now keep in mind, I keep talking about how beautiful this series looks. And that implies one thing, money. And as far as I could tell, Nightflyers was an expensive series. And to be fair, it looks expensive. This is, visually speaking, above and beyond anything I've ever seen on the Syfy channel. Well, I should put that a little differently. It's above and beyond anything produced by the Syfy channel. This series is absolutely gorgeous to look at, and it clearly cost a lot of money, and I understand why they couldn't continue forward with it. As much as I would have liked to have seen more of the Nightflyer and its crew, I kind of get it. It's a pity that Netflix couldn't go it alone, because I would really like to see more of this. But it is what it is. Nightflyer is a really good horror/science fiction series. It's only for one season. It's worth the time to watch, if only to see perhaps where it could have gone, or even to speculate where it was going. It's very much in the vein of Event Horizon. But unlike Event Horizon, Nightflyers is concerned with more than just the physical aspect of horror. And that was my greatest problem with Event Horizon. It was so enraptured by the idea of bodily violence and torture and sadism. And that is a type of horror. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not. But the thing is, that's a very infantile idea of horror, in the sense that it's baby stuff to envision extreme acts of violence as horror. It's visually entertaining, but it's also childish. What I liked about Nightflyers is that it occasionally went beyond that, into areas of madness and psychosis and insanity, and it touched on all these other areas that aren't quite so tangible. Terror is not only body horror, it's more than that. And that's what bothered me the most about Event Horizon. Conversely, the mixture of things is what I like most about Nightflyers. Check out Nightflyers. It's currently on Netflix. It's well worth watching. It's beautiful. And it's interesting. And if you're like me, you'll wish that it went beyond one single season. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace.